Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old video, we are looking at some terrifying events that occurred in Missouri. And it all began with an anonymous tip, which in itself remains a mystery. The police had been sent images of a woman who had gone missing, and this then led them to a disturbing pair of monsters who were, well, up to some horrific stuff out in the woods. Now, let's give it a go. Our story today takes us to Dallas. Dallas County, Missouri. It's located in the heart of the state, and it's relatively sparsely populated. You know, small towns, lots of dense forests, and farmland. A place where, if you didn't want to be found, or if you didn't want anybody to know what you were doing, you would be. The mystery and creepiness, I mean, there's not really any other way to say it, it all began on September 16th, 2021. That's when the FBI received an anonymous tip, which they then forwarded on to the Dallas County Sheriff's Office. The tip sent in was photos the sender claimed to have found on the dark web. The extremely, horrific images, they seemed to show a young woman being held in a cage. She was in great distress, she was being tortured, and then it showed her murder. And the anonymous tipster, they were also claiming that the woman in these photos was a missing 33-year-old mother from Hamilton, Missouri, a town about 3 hours north of Dallas County, and her name was Cassidy Rainwater. Cassidy hadn't been seen for some time, having last been seen in July and officially being reported missing by a family member in late August 2021. Cassidy went to high school in Harrisonville, having her first child when she was 17 years old. He didn't live with either Cassidy nor his father, though. He was adopted by other family members. Cassidy was struggling and homeless, it's believed, at the time of her disappearance. Times were pretty tough for the young woman, but she was working on getting her life together. As soon as the details from this tip came in, the Dallas County Sheriff's Office, they knew, kind of off the bat, who they need to go and, have a chat with. In fact, they were so confident, as soon as they came in, they applied for a search warrant, which they executed the very next day, on the 17th of September. The address on the warrant was a property on Moon Valley Road. The occupier was a 58-year-old man named James Phelps. See, deputies from the Dallas County Sheriff's Office, they had already spoken with James. They'd already spoken with James about Cassidy Rainwater. They'd spoken to him when she was initially reported missing. They had rocked up to his lonely property in the middle of the woods on Moon Valley Road, rocked up to say, hey, what's going on? Do you know anything about, Cassidy? See, the property was remote. It was way out in the boonies, a little ramshackle hut in the forest. And James, he was always a weird guy, odd, creepy. Most people thought, strange folk out in those strange woods, but the police had reason to speak with him about Cassidy. When Cassidy was reported missing back in August, the family member who had reported Cassidy missing had said they believed Cassidy had been with James when she was last seen. Now, in the initial report, though, missing persons report, they listed James Phelps as James Rainwater. They somehow must have assumed they were married incorrectly. Regardless, the sheriff's office kind of quickly figured that out, and they went to speak with James back in August about where Cassidy was. That people were worried about her, that they hadn't seen her in about a month by the time the actual missing persons report had been filed. Now, back in August, James had readily admitted, she was staying here, we'd been hanging out. She was kind of down on her luck a little bit. So James said, I was just giving her a lift up there, just helping her get back on her feet. But then she just upped and vanished in the middle of the night, sometime in late July, and he hadn't seen her since. She'd been talking about going to Colorado, and then never seen her again. Not even a thanks. He said it was weird, but not entirely unexpected. She probably went back to the family, did the old Irish goodbye. I'm not going anywhere. So back then, the deputies, they had no reason to suspect anything untoward about James or about Cassidy. Again, as I said, really strange guy living out in the remotest parts of the forest, but there's no sign that, nothing really linking them to foul play here to go off of. It was really one of those, not sure if you're telling the truth, but we'll leave it for now. Plus that place, James itself, it was creepy enough. You don't want to spend any longer out there than you have to. Obviously, they must have noticed something was off, and they did not forget about James, because as soon then as the FBI passed on this tip about Cassidy Rainwater, they immediately got a search warrant. Were like, we're coming back. Their September 17th visit was very different from the first visit when they had initially spoken to James about Cassidy. A host of armed officers drove out to the remote Moon Valley Road, locked and loaded, and they marched onto the property. James was shocked. "What are you lads doing here?" To which they shoved a search warrant in his face. Once deputies then got inside the property itself, they immediately were like, they recognized this was the same place from those anonymous pictures that had been sent in. There was no doubt in their mind that they were now standing where those pictures had been taken. Those photographs, by the way, are seriously disturbing in and of themselves. The photos showed Cassidy Rainwater only partially clothed and locked in a cage intended for animals. Other photographs depicted Cassidy's body being trussed up on a gantry crane, which is typically used for gutting and preparing wild game animals. The pictures also showed Cassidy's body in various states of evisceration and dissection. Really dark stuff. And the cage and the other items, they were still right there. But there was no sign of Cassidy. They took James's mobile, his computer, his digital devices, and on them, they found even more horrific images, videos, really dark ass stuff. Videos that had been taken in a shed at night, screaming, blood. The investigators were going through every single cabinet, drawer, desk, table. One investigator walked over to the fridge and he opened it up, and inside he just saw the usual out-of-date items we all have, just a bit more grimy than probably your fridge. But he also seen some packages which looked like meat. They were wrapped up. There was no labels on them apart from a piece of tape. The only thing written on that tape wasn't the type of meat, it was just 7/24. That's the date it's believed Cassidy was last seen. And later tests would show that meat was Cassidy. James was taken into custody immediately, but he didn't say a word to the investigators. He would not talk at all. Then, 2 days later, on the 19th of September, with James refusing to talk, investigators picked up James's housemate. He didn't live alone, 56-year-old Timothy Norton. Timothy was a long-haul truck driver, but not currently working, and had lived with James for a fair few years at that point on Moon Valley Road. When he was picked up, he was shocked. He said, didn't know anything about Cassidy. What are you talking about? He didn't know anything about Cassidy, didn't know anything about pictures, didn't know anything about her being kept in a cage and then being tortured and dismembered. The police, though, were able to kind of do immediately the old "know you" when they were able to prove his cell phone had been at that location on the 24th of July. So when confronted with this, little Timothy over here kind of changed his story a bit. And by a bit, I mean a lot. He was a bit more talkative than his housemate, and he said not only did he know that Cassidy had been held in a cage, but he knew exactly what had happened to her. He was now saying that on the 24th of July, he'd been at the property doing his own thing, when James had popped the head out of one of the shacks and asked him to help restrain Cassidy. Then the screams began. Not much is really known about James or Timothy, or their background really at all, though living in isolation like this will do that to you. It appears they have been friends since high school, James a few grades ahead of Timothy when they attended Skyline High School together in the county. They were lifelong friends at this point, and neighbours would say they were both, well, into the, quote, seedier side of things. Not really something you want to hear. After high school graduation, James enlisted in the army, and after that his backstory goes quiet. He had been living at that property on Moon Valley Road since at least the early 90s. Timothy Norton, he joined the Marines after school. And in the early 90s he had a few run-ins with the law, but for minor stuff. I'm talking bad checks, non-payment of debts, that sort of thing. He was married twice, and he then went on to be a truck driver, getting this sick-ass tattoo. The pair were close out in them woods, up to God knows what. The search of the property lasted for weeks, and yeah, they found a little bit more than they were expecting, but also a little bit less than they were expecting. In a very weird twist, one of the buildings on Moon Valley Road burnt down. On the 4th of October, a bomb squad was called to that property on Moon Valley Road. James and Timothy, they had booby-trapped their own place. Luckily, none of the police were hurt, but around the area, tripwires attached to improvised incendiary devices, multiple were found on the property. One of the officers must have tripped the wire. And the tripwire, the cages, everything they found made this seem like it was a lot bigger than two men murdering one woman and then eviscerating her. First of all, you got these images being put up, sold or whatever on the dark web. Like, was there more here than just two creepy guys out in the woods? Was this more like a true detective kind of type situation? And it's incredible to think all of this was found due to an anonymous tipster sending in an email to the FBI, an email that had simply been titled Cassidy. And before we continue, let me just mention that this whole video is sponsored by Beam, the best way to get an amazing night's sleep, because you need your sleep, folks. Personally, I'm not a great sleeper. You know, when I'm lying in bed, my brain is always going a million miles a minute because I'm always just thinking about what videos I could be cooking up for you. I'm like a zombie all day, exhausted, wishing I could just go to bed, sucking my thumb. But with Dream, I get some top tier, top shelf snoozing. Dream Powder is specifically formulated to help you get your best night's sleep. And as a company ran by former professional athletes, they know the importance of getting that snooze in. A cup of Dream is delicious. It comes in different flavors too. I'm talking sea salt caramel, cinnamon cocoa, chocolate peanut butter, and guess what? It's spooky season, so you got to have your pumpkin spice. There's no added sugar, it's only 15 calories, it's free of all the stuff you don't want, and it is clinically shown to give you the best night's sleep ever. All you need, 1 to 2 scoops, water or milk, and the next day your skin be better, your mind be better, you be better. It helps reduce stress, improve reaction time, improves your immune system. It gives you a boost by simply giving you what your body needs, which I think we can all agree we do not get enough of with screens everywhere. Sleep. Good old sleep. So please click the link below to subscribe and save 20%. And guess what? If you use my special code, CHAPTER, you get an extra 15% off on top, and a free frother to get that foamy goodness. That's up to 35% off, and you can pause, you can skip, you can cancel at any time, so there's no risk. And if you're into CBD to really chill out, they have that too. So please click the link below and use code CHAPTER to get 35% off your subscription to Beam, the best way to get some Dream. Thank you so much to Beam for sponsoring this whole video, and to Dream, which does exactly what it says in the tin. Now, let's get back to the story. So, back to it. Tripwires were found on the property. Tripwires that looked like they had been set up after Cassidy had been killed, as in like James and Timothy had been expecting. They'd been waiting for somebody to come in, police, whatever, and they wanted this whole place to disappear. That's even in True Detective now that I think about it. And so with fires being started on the property, this really hampered the investigation a whole lot. Like, it made it so much harder. A lot of evidence was burnt to the ground, and it was really hard to set up a timeline of what exactly happened and what else they could have been up to. Throughout their investigation, the county sheriff's office and FBI played their cards pretty close to the chest and released and confirmed very little information to the public. And so with this entire setup and very little being released, speculation was kind of like everywhere. And sure, I don't blame them. I mean, first of all, pictures up on the dark web of Cassidy. It's like, were there more pictures up there? The tipster, who sent this in? Who was viewing this? Still anonymous, so it's kind of impossible to say where they found these images, who they were. Were they in like the same cahoots as this person? The only thing that's known about them is that they were in Germany. But I mean, sure, could have used a VPN or something like that to change their address. Had they been doing this for a while? I mean, you got two creepy guys out there in the woods, and the way it was done, it would lead you to think they had in fact been doing this for a while. So were others involved then? Rumors ranged from kidnap for hire and underground hostel style rings, all the way to a full-blown cannibal meat black market. And the thing is, that seems at least partly true. I mean, she was held in a cage, her photos are put on the dark web, and then she had been chopped up into meat and put in the fridge. What were they going to do with it? I can hazard a guess. Like, were they going to sell parts of her online? James had a profile on a BDSM site. Was he using that to contact victims, or for people who wanted to join in? BDSM stands for murder. When the house and the crime scene burned down, many were quick to scream cover up and claim it had been done purposely by law enforcement to cover up involvement of powerful local figures. that this had been going on, for years, and every time it nearly was leaked, released to the police or to the media, some local bigwig came in, shut that shit down. That there was way more to this. It wasn't just James and Timothy. A lot of people had visited that property on Moon Valley Road, and strings stretched out from there across America, from Missouri to Germany, maybe. Timothy Norton would finally give a full interview and statement to the police. He said James Phelps had called him over on the 24th of July to aid him in restraining Cassidy. Cassidy had been asleep in the living room on the floor, and so James thought this was the perfect moment. She'd be easy to subdue. Timothy claimed he went in there, he held her feet down while James got on top of her and strangled her to death. After she was dead, the two men took her outside and attached her to a gantry crane where she was trussed up like a dead deer, and James then chopped her up. Once her body was completely dismembered, James and Timothy moved the remains to the bathroom of his house and placed them, piece by piece, into the bathtub. And from there he chopped her up like steak and into the freezer for, well, probably wasn't going to keep it just to look at it. After one appearance in court, Timothy told a local news station that
it just kind of happened. Things like I told somebody else once, it kind of went sideways.
And that he
believe I deserve to die. And I'm ready for that. It's not right to take a life. Everybody harps at me, I'm a monster, I'm a monster, I'm a monster. They don't know who I am.
Timothy also told investigators that at one point, himself and James had gone out to the local Walmarts in search of victims, which is only throwing more fuel on the fire that this wasn't their first time. I don't think it was. For some reason, Cassidy trusted James, staying with him. Why? Don't know, but he used that to his advantage. And I mean, Timothy's own story about how it went down, that she was sleeping and he held her down and she was strangled. The photos that the tipster had sent in showed Cassidy was alive in the cage. This wasn't a quick death. She'd been tortured in there. Both men were allocated public defenders during their initial court appearances, where they faced charges including first-degree kidnapping, moving a corpse, and inflicting injury, not to mention murder. Now, even though both of Cassidy's killers, they were caught and they were imprisoned, it's hard to say she actually got real justice, and that we even know the full story here.
After 2 years, Timothy Norton, the last person in the Cassidy Rainwater investigation, learned he will serve life without parole.
There's no other sentence eligible in this case besides life without parole. So we knew if he entered a plea, that would be the sentence.
Norton entered that plea in court Tuesday.
You agree that you did assist in her murder by strangulation?
Yes.
In April 2023, James Phelps and Timothy Norton both managed to get plea deals, with James Phelps accepting an Alford plea. An Alford plea is, when he gets a deal, he's basically maintaining he's innocent, but that he knows that if it went to trial, it would likely end in a guilty plea. Those pleas meant they'd only be sentenced for the murder charges, and not the other crimes like terrorizing and kidnapping. And without those extra charges, the death penalty was taken off the table. James Phelps and Timothy Norton each received a life without parole sentence. So the family didn't have to go through a trial, right? And both James Phelps and Timothy Norton will die in cages, just like they did to Cassidy, but it also means that because there's no trial, the whole story won't come out. It truly feels like there's something more here, stuff we will never know, and now we will likely never know. And pound for pound, going just by population, there is a startling number of disappearances in Missouri. In an eerily tragic twist to the tale, Cassidy's mother, Tracy Wawasuk, went missing back in 2007, aged 43, just 10 years older than Cassidy herself was when she died. Tracy's body was later discovered in a field just outside the town of Lebanon, which is right near Moon Valley, by a farmer. And the coroner confirmed at the time that there was an ongoing investigation into Tracy's death, but he couldn't confirm any details, including how she had died. Her boyfriend at the time had told reporters that she often went out into the woods in the local area looking for artifacts, arrowheads, that kind of thing. One day she went out on a random stroll in the woods and she never came home. Now, no one was ever arrested regarding what had happened to Cassidy's mother, Tracy. And in fact, there's been little in the way of progress regarding how this all happened. But it's very, very weird that what happened to Cassidy and Tracy was found very close to it. And Cassidy wasn't even from Lebanon. So obviously the nature of her own mother's demise being so sadly similar to her own in close proximity, that only adds to the fire of there being more here than people are letting on. that there is, a cult, conspiracy, dark web ring, something here. There's gotta be more because of what they found. It simply points to there being more here. Let me just briefly talk to you about something called the School of Metaphysics, which is something a lot of people have mentioned in regards to this case. The School of Metaphysics is, kind of hard to explain. It was founded in 1998, and seems to be about living your best life through grounded spiritual living, whatever that means.
Their consciousness is evolved through the complete experience, and they bring that consciousness wherever they go and to whatever they do.
Some say they're just a non-violent hippie cult that only eats fruits, that sort of thing. Others claim that's what they want you to think. I mean, they have buildings in cities across America, mainly in the Midwest, but then also in some places out of the way, like near Moon Valley Road. They also have some very strange videos.
The minds of the Yucatan in Central America foresaw the ending of a great world age. As Mother Earth ascends to a higher consciousness, she will bring forth the Great Awakening.
Now, as bananas as this video is, I'm positive they're just a friendly group of people who just want to get away from everybody else. But this being in this very small area in Missouri where a lot has happened, it just keeps adding to the strangeness. I mean, even a recent story I told, the abduction of Angela Hammond, that also happened not too far away, and that case has links to a lot of other missing people. I'm sure they're just, harmless hippies living out there in the woods, but they don't seem too popular in the town, and they're about as culty as it gets. And some say that they're looking at they have these remote properties to hide skeletons, essentially, to hide what they're really up into. Maybe, the word occult has been used in that conversation a lot. And I wouldn't be surprised if James was involved with the School of Metaphysics at some point. He was with the Universal Life Church, which is very different. But if he was interested in religion, spirituality, he likely would have popped into the School of Metaphysics too. And for just such an out-of-the-way place, it seems like there's a lot in this area. And so that is, to date anyway, no more has really come out, and it's unlikely anything will, with both James Phelps and Timothy Norton being sent away for the rest of their lives, and both are not saying nothing. By far one of the most upsetting and disturbing cases. Yeah, not only for what happened to poor Cassidy, who despite her troubles was a loving mother with her whole life ahead, but also for the implications of what else was going out there, what else was happening on Moon Valley Road, those sick sons of bitches, and I mean, the links to online stuff. Was there other people involved? The fact that they had booby-trapped their own house. Was it there to hurt people, or was it there to destroy their own place so more couldn't be found? Now it never will be. Or if it has, the police aren't saying, and now that it's never going to go to trial, they won't. Who knows what is out there still. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate being here. Watching this whole video with me means the world to me, as always. Please, if you're looking for more stuff, check out the That Chapter Patreon, where there's early access to videos and exclusive videos. That Chapter Podcast is a whole host of different types of stories there, so give it a go. But until the next video, take care of each other and yourselves, because I love you. Mike out.